On April 26, 2008, a shocking case occurred in the city of Amstetten, Lower Austria. A case that did not have any brutal murder details, left the people with a terrifying obsession when the heinous crimes committed by the father against his own daughter were revealed. Let's explore with Unmasked the hidden corners behind this story. In a seemingly ordinary town, nestled in the heart of a quiet neighborhood, lies a house with secrets darker than anyone could imagine. The residents of the town know Josef as a strict but hardworking man, respected by his neighbors and feared by his family. But behind the walls of his home, Josef harbored a horrifying secret, one that would remain hidden for more than 2 decades. A secret that involved his daughter, Elisabeth Fritzl. Josef Fritzl was born on 9th of April 1935 in Amstetten to Josef Siener and Maria, née Nenning, Fritzl. He grew up as an only child raised solely by his working mother. His father, who was a severe alcoholic, had deserted the family when Fritzl was 4 and never again came into contact with him. Josef was a quiet and hard-working man who worked hard to support his family. He worked in his basement workshop every day and even slept there overnight. Elisabeth, a bright and spirited 18-year-old girl, had always longed for freedom from her father's oppressive rule. Josef controlled every aspect of her life, from what she wore to who she could speak to. On the surface, he appeared to be a caring father, but behind closed doors, his temper and need for control terrified the family. One evening, Elisabeth vanished without a trace. Josef claimed she had run away, leaving a note behind, stating she had joined a group and would not return. Rosemary, Josef's wife, was devastated but believed the note, though it was unlike Elisabeth to leave without saying goodbye. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, with no word from Elisabeth. The police conducted a search, but with no clues to follow, the case quickly grew cold. Rosemary, though heartbroken, accepted Josef's explanation that their daughter had left to start a new life. Little did she know, Elisabeth was closer than she could ever have imagined. The dark basement. Beneath the house, hidden in the darkness, is a double basement. Everyone only knows about the cellar above, where Josef has a mechanical workshop and works every day. They do not know about the existence of the basement below. Dark, damp, and cramped place. Josef secretly built it very elaborately, with a double-layer soundproof door system, a dark space completely isolated from the outside world. The story begins on August 28, 1984. Josef called his daughter down to the cellar below the house with the reason that he was installing a door for the newly renovated cellar, and asked her to help. Elisabeth agreed to go down and hold the door so her father could install the hinges. Josef took advantage of the moment when his daughter was not paying attention and used a towel soaked in ether to cover her mouth, causing her to lose consciousness. When Elisabeth woke up, she found herself in a dark and quiet room, trying to remember what had happened, and couldn't believe what her father had done. She screamed in the dark, then fainted in exhaustion and panic. She lay there, not knowing how long it had been, when the light in the cellar suddenly turned on. She looked around the empty cellar and struggled to get up with all her remaining strength. She banged on the door and continued to scream, but the response was still only silence from the walls, and the light went out. Elisabeth was once again plunged into darkness and despair, suffocating because the ventilation had stopped working. Meanwhile, Josef sat in the basement above, satisfied with his punishment and complete control over his daughter. He gave himself control over Elisabeth's light, air, food, and water, and was ready to deprive her of them all if she rebelled. Devil Father. For weeks in the dark cellar, Elisabeth was tortured both mentally and physically. Josef would bring her food every few days. She begged her father to let her go, but in return, he only gave her cold eyes and terrible beatings if she did not obey. Later, Joseph told the police, at first, he just wanted to punish his daughter for being ungrateful, rude, and disobedient. However, day after day, week after week, everything he did was hidden from everyone. Feeling of satisfaction from being in complete control of others took over his mind. Joseph wanted to subdue Elizabeth and turn her into an obedient pet that would listen to its owner. Everything continued until one day, when Joseph thought he had control over Elizabeth, he untied her leg chain. Elizabeth suddenly attacked him with a sharp metal lid. The two sides argued and struggled. Joseph's trust completely collapsed, replaced by anger as if betrayed. Before his eyes now was no longer his daughter. Elizabeth was just a treacherous, insolent, and unruly woman. He hit Elizabeth repeatedly in the stomach and face. She lay motionless on the ground. Her clothes were askew, revealing the body of a girl who had just turned 18. Joseph's animal instincts arose. He could no longer control himself and rushed to rape his own daughter. The double life. Above ground, Joseph continued to live his life as though nothing had happened. He maintained his job, interacted with neighbors, and upheld his image as a responsible family man. In the basement, he continued to torture and turn Elizabeth into a sex slave to satisfy his lust. Everything he did became more and more perverted, because he knew everything was still perfectly hidden, and Elizabeth seemed to have resigned herself, no longer resisting. Rosemary, grieving the loss of her daughter, grew more withdrawn, finding solace in the belief that Elizabeth had chosen a different path. But Rosemary couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Strange noises at odd hours, missing items, and a growing sense of unease plagued her. Joseph always had a quick explanation, dismissing her concerns as paranoia. Yet in her heart, Rosemary knew something wasn't right. Father or grandfather? Over the years, Elizabeth gave birth to many children, all of them Joseph's. These children, born in the dark, never seen the outside world. Joseph controlled every aspect of their lives, making sure they were hidden from everyone, including Rosemary. Because the basement was too small, Joseph brought some of the children to the surface. He forced Elizabeth to write a letter saying that she had given birth, but was unable to raise the child and needed help from her parents. Joseph left the letter with the child and placed it on the doorstep, where poor Rosemary could easily see it. Rosemary, desperate for any connection to her lost daughter, accepted Joseph's story, believing that Elizabeth was too ashamed to return home, but still cared enough to leave her children with them. The children were taken in by Rosemary, who raised them with love, unaware of their true origin. Late light. How long Joseph intended to keep Elizabeth captive is unclear, but in 2008, something unexpected happened. Elizabeth knelt down and begged Joseph to take her daughter Kirsten to the hospital, because Kirsten's health condition was critical. Kirsten suffered from a rare disease caused by inbreeding. Joseph had no choice but to reluctantly agree to take Kirsten to the hospital. Of course, he also used the excuse that Elizabeth had sent a letter explaining Kirsten's illness and asking for help. Kirsten was now a minor, but her body was small and weak. Mark, Elizabeth's ex-boyfriend, tried to approach Kirsten to ask her for some information about Elizabeth. He had been searching for her for years, but had no information. Did not believe in her absurd disappearance. Through Kirsten's fragmented and confusing answers about the basement, her mother, her siblings, and her panic when she saw Joseph, Mark vaguely realized something and shared his thoughts with a friend who is now a police officer in the city. Finally, the investigation into the mysterious disappearance of Elizabeth Fritzl was restarted. They reread the letters that Elizabeth had sent to Mr. and Mrs. Fritzl and began to see contradictions in them. With the support of Rosemary, who had long harbored suspicions, they finally confronted Joseph. The basement where Joseph worked as a mechanic was searched, and they found a secret door behind a shelf of machines and tools. The basement below the basement was discovered. On April 26, 2008, Elizabeth Fritzl saw the light of day for the first time after 24 years of captivity. She immediately ran to the hospital to visit her daughter and was taken into an interrogation room by the police. New life. After being rescued and taken to the police interrogation room, Elizabeth recounted the story of her 24 years of captivity in unimaginable detail. She said that her father had locked her in the basement of the house. She had given birth to 7 children, and sometimes Joseph would come down to the basement, forcing her to watch different types of pornographic films and making her reenact those scenes. She also said that the abuse had started when she was only 11 years old. During her time in the basement, Elizabeth was raped so many times that she could not remember, sometimes every few days, sometimes several times a day. That same night, Joseph was arrested by the police, and Rosemary was shocked when she learned about this incident. Police said that she and the people living in the apartment had no idea what was happening right under their feet. Elizabeth now lives in Austria under a completely new identity. Her home is always monitored by cameras, and police regularly patrol the area to ensure her safety. Despite being over 50 years old, Elizabeth has not had a new photo since she was 16. Psychiatrist Heidi Kastner, who interviewed Fritzl to assess whether he was fit to stand trial, said, "What he said was harsh and rude, which shows that he had a strong need to dominate women in sex." In 2009, at the age of 82, Fritzl was convicted of murder after killing Elizabeth's unborn child, false imprisonment, and rape. Currently, this evil man is serving a life sentence.